Hey everybody, here we are at the end of day 18. So, started it by doing some meditation. Now, going back, these meditations I'm following were done in 2020. So, this was done in March, April 2020. So, everybody's was staying at home and social distancing. So Jay had a guest leading the meditation, and it was being relayed from her through his computer, and picking it up, and you didn't see her but you heard her. But I had a hard time focusing on it because the audio was very distorted. And she was very chatty. I like Jay because he talks calm and quiet and gives you time to pause and think and all that in between. This lady was very chatty, and the music in the background was very choppy. So I stuck it out. I didn't feel as relaxed as I did with Jay's. Like I said, his voice is more calming. And she focused on energy to start with. And she had us rubbing our hands together to create energy, and then she had us doing this breathing thing, and you reach up and you breathe in, you pull your hands down, you breathe out. And then you were doing this. And I was like, okay, that's not getting me in a frame of mind for meditating, but okay. So then she had us imagining. She used to imagine, not visualize, she used to imagine. And imagine you're outside, or you're imagine your feet on the ground, and then you're feeling the ground. Is it wet? Is it cold? Is it dry? Is it sandy? Is it gritty? And then imagine you're putting down roots from your feet into the ground and sending those roots out, and then there's roots were going through the earth, and they're connecting with roots from the healthcare workers and the first responders and all that, and sending your energy to them and receiving their energy. And it was interesting. And she had one part too. We were covered with this goo, and we were imagining that this goo is melting off of us from our head slowly down on our body. I don't know. It was just a little different. It was not what I was used to. But then again, it was kind of distorted because he was doing it, kind of relaying it. So we'll see. Hopefully day 19 will be back with him leading it. And then back in my book, I started chapter 4, and chapter 4 was talking about the value of suffering. And I'm just going to scan it through the pages here. I didn't write notes. It talks about, in the closing months in 1944, after almost a decade of war, the tide was turning against Japan. And the U.S. forces were taking over, and the defeats seemed to be inevitable. And there talks about this Japanese second lieutenant, Hiro Onada. He was in the Japanese Imperial Army. He was deployed to a small island of Lubang in the Philippines, and his orders were to slow the U.S. progress as much as possible, fight at all costs, and to never surrender. And both him and his commander knew this was essentially like it was a suicide mission, but they did what they were ordered. And in 1945, the Americans arrived in Lubang and took over the overwhelming force. And within days, they had either Japanese soldiers either surrendered or had been killed. But Onada and 3 of his men managed to stay hidden in the jungle. From there, they became like guerrilla warfare campaign against the U.S. forces, and they were attacking the local population, trying to interrupt the supply lines, doing whatever they could. And then in August of that year is when the U.S. dropped the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the Japanese surrendered. However, thousands of Japanese soldiers were still scattered among the Pacific Isles, and most, like Onada, were hiding in the jungle, unaware that the war was over. And then Eastern Asia was trying to rebuild, and both the Japanese and the U.S. dropped flyers over these islands, trying to tell these people that these soldiers were hiding out that the war was over. Onada, and then it was time to go home, and Onada and his men figured they were fake, so they didn't come out. They figured it was a trap. And they burned the leaflets for fire. So 5 years went by, and the leaflets had stopped. And all the American forces all long gone home, and the population of Lubang was trying to return to normal, lives of fishing and farming that. But this Onada and his guys was still stealing from the farmers, shooting the farmers, burning their crops, and murdering locals. Went into the jungle. And the Philippine government then took drawing up new flyers and spreading them through the jungle, trying to tell them to come out. The war was over. You lost. And those were ignored as well. In 1952, the Japanese government made one final effort to draw the last remaining soldiers out of hiding. This time, letters and pictures from the missing soldiers' families were dropped. And still, Onada refused to believe it. And years gone by, one of Onada's companions surrendered, another had been killed, and the last one with him, Kozaka, was killed in a shootout with police. So Onada's still hanging out in the jungle by himself. And I think some of them, Japan figured he was dead or whatever. And then months progressed into years and that, and there was another guy by last name Suzuki. He's kind of more the adventure hippie explorer type. And things weren't going well for him. He volunteered on farms for food. He was just kind of bumming around, kind of a free spirit. And he was getting bored of his adventures, and he decided he needed another one. So he decided to go into the jungles of that town and look for Onada. Unarmed, untrained, no sort of training. He just wandered around and called out Onada's name really loudly, telling him the emperor was worried about him. And he found the guy within 4 days. And they stayed together for some time, and then Suzuki asked Onada why he had stayed and continued to fight. And this was it ended up being 25 years this guy was hiding in the jungle. And he asked Onada why he stayed and continued to fight, and Onada said it was simple. He'd been given an order to never surrender. And yes, he stayed. He was following orders. And then Onada asked Suzuki why a hippie boy like him came looking for him. And Suzuki said he'd left Japan in search of 3 things: Lieutenant Onada, a panda bear, and the abominable snowman, in that order. And the 2 men were brought together under the weirdest circumstances, and then Um, ends up Suzuki. They find the panda bear, and the Suzuki decides he wants to go on to the Himalayas in search of the abominable snowman. He died during that search. And Otto eventually returned to town, but he was kind of treated like a celebrity for a while, but then he wasn't comfortable with that, and he decided to take off to. And in 1980, he moved to Brazil, where he remained until he died. But they went through all that suffering, but for them it had a purpose. Like, is there a purpose to our suffering? I don't know. I'm gonna stop and think about that. But that was just interesting. And that was just the first part of that chapter. So it goes on and talks about different things after it. So today, after that, I decluttered the bottom of my closet. Like, I did cleaned out the clothes one day last week, and I've got a pile to get rid of over here. So I went through the bottom of my closet because there's boxes and bins and stuff. Turns out like 3 or 4 of the bins were empty, taking up space down there. So pulled things out, reorganized stuff, took out my summer clothes, or some of the clothes I had, shorts and bathing suit stuff I had from the cruise. I put them over in my drawers over here for hopefully for the nicer weather. And then some of the other stuff that I won't be using for a while is packed away and compacted, fewer bins and stuff in there, so I got that done. And then it hung up. I found some more tank tops. I hang them up in my closet. Then I ended up when I'm going through stuff, I come across more paperwork. It's like, I don't need any more papers, so I shredded them. I vacuumed my room between dog hair and little bits of paper from the shredder and stuff. It was like, I needed to vacuum. Working on my water. I've lost track. I think this is number 3. Could be number 4. I've lost track. It's full again. I had a smoothie, had some soup, and then my son and his girlfriend ordered pizza and brought me up a few slices. So that was dinner. Sorry, dry mouth. Cleared some clutter off my dresser as well. Just kind of little bits of clutter here and there. Just still more to go through. One day at a time. I don't know what I'll do tomorrow. Found the things to put I have a standing air conditioner that has like the vent thing, like on a dryer that goes up and out a bracket that goes in the window. I got that all set up. Not that it's going to turn that hot anytime soon, but there is a fan thing on it that I can, when the weather warms up again, I'll be ready, rather than last week when it was 80 and stuffy up here. So I got that much accomplished. I'm not sure what tomorrow's going to bring, but hopefully get a better meditation, and let's see what the next chapter or next part of the chapter brings. And I have to finish organizing for my live stream Thursday night. So thank you for sticking with me. I know this is a long one, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye for now.